Parenting is easy. At least I used to think so. As a psychotherapist for 20 years and a parenting skills educator for much of that time, I really did think so. I used to give brilliant talks. They were true genius, engaging, inspiring, educational, and fun. After I delivered them, I would receive glowing feedback that only further validated how effective I already knew I was. Until the sobering moment when someone would approach me and say, "Great talk, I learned a lot, really funny," and then they'd lower the boom. "You don't have any kids, do you?" Ugh, I would get so angry. I didn't need to have kids in order to know how to parent. I had worked with kids and their families for decades. I knew what worked and what didn't. I resented the implication and blew off the feedback. Very mature, right? Then in 1999, I had my first child, a beautiful little girl. At last, I could put my parenting skills to the test. I did, eagerly, and they worked. Arlie was and remains a very easy child. She was warm and loving. She went along to get along. She listened. She was appreciative and grateful. What more evidence did I need? What more evidence did they need? I was just an amazing parent. At that time, and I am not even slightly exaggerating, I truly believed that this angel of well-behaved human goodness was the direct result of my fabulous parenting. It's funny because it's so ridiculous. But back then, I believed it with every fiber of my being. I had no idea at the time that some children come this way from the factory. It is clear to me now that because I believed my parenting was so wonderful, and since I believed it so strongly, God thought it best to send a very different child my way. And 3 years later, Zoe arrived. It was immediately obvious that Zoe was going to be a bit more challenging. I knew it when the nurses interrupted my shower 2 days after the cesarean section to tell me they were leaving her in my room because her crying was disturbing other babies. Okay, I thought to myself, this feels different. And it was. As a baby, Zoe was more active than Arlie, but that didn't really alarm me. Arlie was strangely calm. Zoe was more like her mother. Of course I liked that. She had fire in her belly, passion. However, as she moved from babyhood to toddlerhood, things began to shift. She was defiant, angry, and at times out of control. I used every parenting skill I knew, but to no avail. She's only 5, I would think. What is this going to look like at 15? Zoe's behavior was frightening. She had wild tantrums, threw scissors, and made up crazy stories that she passed off as true. For example, she would sneak into our room in the middle of the night and scream in our ears while we were sound asleep because she was angry that we wouldn't let her sleep in our bed. She was the child with whom no one wanted his or her kid to play. That's how bad it got. I was scared. Scratch that. I was petrified. And I was embarrassed. My world was coming undone. My child was out of control. I couldn't help her, and I felt like a fraud. I considered leaving my career. What could I offer families with whom I was working if I didn't even know how to help my own child? The only thing that kept me from having a nervous breakdown during this time was my faith. Ironically, Faith is Zoe's middle name. That in all my years as a psychotherapist, I had never run across a severely dysfunctional adult who had been raised in a family like ours. We are loving and peaceful. We care deeply for our daughter. Most psychopaths don't have that kind of family history. Realizing that helped me calm down. And lo and behold, in the process of calming down, I noticed that things were getting better. This was a light bulb moment for me. I began to realize that my anxiety about Zoe's behavior was contributing to her acting out. This understanding gradually led me to see how my behavior and issues directly influence my children. As I tried new strategies for calming myself and giving my daughters more space, I began to see what I'd been doing wrong and what actually works, and I developed a completely new parenting philosophy. This book is based on all that I have learned since then about how our own issues affect our children's growth and maturity. I believe that understanding this connection is the key to parenting success.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.